So next we're going to talk about what does backwards planning look like in the music classroom. So for our first step, we know in backwards planning, we first want to look at what do you want them to know? What is your end result? What must the students be able to do and take away at the end of the learning unit or the learning cycle? So what skills are they going to master? What will they know? What will they understand? Or what will they do? So you're going to establish those goals first. So really figure out what's involved. Once you kind of know what your goals are going to be, you can go ahead and correlate them to your content standards. For most of us, we use the Georgia Standards of Excellence. Some districts have their own spin on that. I know in my district, we have a different set of standards. Whatever you use, once you've decided your goals, then correlate them to your performance standards. Go ahead and create those essential questions and then figure out what are you going to have as your observable and measurable outcomes. If I'm teaching a particular bowing technique, is it going to be that they can demonstrate the bowing? Is it going to be that they can identify the bowing when someone else plays it? Is it going to be that they can write the bowing technique or write the articulation out on paper? Whatever it is, make sure you have a way to be observable and measurable outcome. So that would be step one in our backwards planning model. So for step two, this is where we're going to develop those assessments in your music classroom. And this is not only what is your final assessment, whether it's a concert, whether it's a performance, whether it's a recording, but what are your benchmarks along the way? What are those formative touch points that you're going to use to help make sure that you're heading in the right direction? So often, I think as music teachers, we use lots of informal formative assessment, but I think also we can do more formal formative assessment to make sure that we're really tracking the data and making sure that our students are getting what they need. So you're going to plan those assessments. When we're planning assessments, we want to think through some of these questions below. Is performance enough? Is a group performance enough? Sometimes it may be, sometimes it may not be, depending on what it is. And so, in a group setting, sometimes students can hide. In an individual performance setting, it may be less able to hide. So sometimes just going down the row, that's an informal assessment. Sometimes one by one, sometimes submitting a performance recording of themselves playing. But really ponder on, is performance going to be enough to demonstrate that mastery? Or is that more of a formative thing for you? Is it possible for students to do well on a playing test and not understand the concept? Eesh. So we all know that student that is able to learn something for a test, to learn the 20 measures, but still can't go back and play it somewhere else or out of context in another part of the piece. So really making sure that when we're assigning something for a playing test, that's really something that they're going to be able to use and show mastery. I think sometimes, we want them to have a playing test spot because we want them to learn this hard passage. That's fine. But I think making sure if we're assigning stuff that's really going to demonstrate that they have that deeper understanding. What kind of evidence would I need to prove student understanding? So, what do you need? If someone were to say to you, how do you know that this whole row of kids understands spiccato bowing? So, what would you need to show them? Would it be a playing assessment? Would it be down the road? Something. What would you do to show that? What kind of evidence do you need? How do I know they will use that understanding on the next musical challenge? So, are you able to then give them something else and see if they can demonstrate that transfer of knowledge? So, just kind of thinking through those things as we're developing assessments. Often we develop assessments, but we develop assessments for our own needs, such as first violins have this really hard part and I just want them to learn it. Or I need to get another formative grade in or another summative grade in. But if we really build our assessments carefully and thoughtfully to always go back to step one and think about our end goal, then I think our assessments lead to deeper learning. And I really like this part of this model because I think it really does help you think through how to help students reach that deeper thinking. Then finally, once you've developed those assessments, make sure you create any necessary rubrics. And the rubrics are just as important. If you're using a rubric that isn't measuring for what you're trying to get, the rubric is sort of pointless. So make sure your rubric is really measuring for the skills you're trying to assess. Oftentimes we can make a rubric and make it so detailed that we're measuring too many things. Sometimes if we just measure the one thing that we're talking about, maybe if we're doing a formative on demonstration of two note slurs, just measure that. Don't get into measuring the left hand technique, right hand technique. Just if it's just a quick thing, keep it simple. I think the more we can keep it clear, the easier it is for kids to know whether or not they've got it or whether they need some remediation. And then finally, step three in this instructional process is creating our classroom instruction. So we want to structure our class meetings, plan our classes, plan all the things we're going to do so that we can get our benchmarks going. So we use all of our resources. We're very lucky now in the string world and really in all the music world to have multiple resources. We've got method books, scale books, we've got exercises online, we've got tons of free YouTubes and warm-ups, rhythm activities. There's so much possibility out there. So the more we can mix it up and find ways to engage students, I think this is where we can let our creativity flow to help get us back to what are we trying to master. So this is where I think many of us have done very successfully, whether you're using instruction by design or whether you're using, traditional planning, but really making sure that you're using all these different resources to help plan your daily rehearsal plan and make sure that the students are working towards those benchmarks and those formatives that you've set up back in step 2. I really liked this particular bullet point here. It said the daily rehearsal plan should show design work we have done as educators so that students come away with the skills necessary to perform in concert, as well as the understandings necessary to make musical decisions in future musical experiences. So not only should our students be able to play the concert music, but they should have such good understanding of the skills that we're building from step 1 that they can apply it towards the next thing. That's how we get that musical growth. Sometimes it gets hard. I think as we get into the more advanced levels, especially older kids that have, a little more experience, it can be a little harder sometimes to dig that out. But I think the more we can focus on building that transfer, really can be wonderful. Each rehearsal should become a quest to deeper understanding of whatever concept or skill that you're working on. So whether you're using understanding by design or traditional instructional planning, really working towards mastery, I think is the goal no matter what you're doing.